For 3 years, the boy screamed every time water touched his skin. His mother spent $4 million on specialists across 5 continents. They called it aquaphobia. They called it psychosomatic. They called it untreatable. Then a pool cleaner noticed something floating in the water after the boy swam, and what she discovered didn't just save his life, it exposed a conspiracy so twisted it would make headlines for years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we continue, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, have you ever ignored your gut instinct and regretted it? Because this story is about the one woman who didn't. The Okafor estate sat on 12 acres of Miami beachfront property. The kind of place you see in architecture magazines with a title like Modern Paradise or Luxury Redefined. The infinity pool stretched toward the ocean like a mirror trying to merge with the sky. Turquoise water, Italian tiles, underwater speakers that played Chopin. But if you listened closely on Tuesday afternoons, you'd hear something else. Screaming. Malik Okafor was 10 years old, and every Tuesday at 3 p.m., his aquatic therapist arrived with the same hopeful smile and the same inevitable failure. Dr. Yolanda Chen had credentials that filled 2 pages. Stanford, Johns Hopkins, published research on childhood phobias. She'd worked with Olympic athletes and trauma survivors. But she couldn't get Malik within 5 feet of water without him losing his mind. "Come on, sweetheart," Dr. Chen coaxed, kneeling by the pool's edge. "We'll just dip 1 toe, that's all. 1 toe." Malik stood frozen on the deck, his small body rigid, eyes locked on the water like it was filled with sharks instead of chlorine. His mother, Chidinma Okafor, watched from the veranda, champagne in hand even though it was barely afternoon. Her designer sunglasses hid eyes that hadn't slept properly in years. "Malik, baby, please," Chidinma called out, her Nigerian accent still thick despite 20 years in America. Dr. Chen flew all the way from California. The least you can do is try. But Malik wasn't trying. He was backing away, chest heaving. Dr. Chen reached for his hand. "I promise, nothing bad will." The moment her fingers touched his, Malik erupted, not crying, not whimpering. Full-throated, primal screaming that made the estate security guards look up from their posts. He thrashed backward, fell hard on the stone deck, scrambled away on hands and knees, still screaming. Chidinma dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on marble. Dr. Chen sat back on her heels, defeated. Again, this was session 47. She'd tried everything. Gradual exposure, cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnosis, medication, virtual reality desensitization. Nothing worked. The boy would swim in bathtubs. He'd play in rain puddles. He'd even swam in the ocean last summer during their Maldives vacation. But this pool? This specific pool? He'd rather die. "I don't understand," Dr. Chen said quietly as Malik's nanny, an older Haitian woman named Claudette, wrapped him in a towel and carried him inside. "He's not hydrophobic. He's pool-specific phobic. That's not a recognized condition." Chidinma lit a cigarette with shaking hands. Her third husband, Malik's stepfather, didn't allow smoking in the house, but right now she didn't care. "Then maybe," she said, voice hard, "you need to recognize it." Dr. Chen left 20 minutes later with a check for $18,000 and a referral to a colleague in Switzerland who specialized in atypical anxiety presentations. Chidinma watched her go, then looked at the pool. Beautiful, perfect, utterly useless. She'd bought this house specifically for that pool. After Malik's father, her first husband, died in a car accident, she'd remarried Adatokunbo, a real estate developer who promised her the world. He'd built this palace, put in this pool, told her it would help Malik overcome his trauma. But the trauma only got worse. And now, 3 years later, she had a $2.3 million swimming pool that her son treated like a mass grave. What she didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that Malik's instincts were right. The pool was a grave. It just hadn't claimed its victim yet. Blessing Nowosu arrived every Thursday morning at 6 a.m., before the family woke up, before the heat turned Miami into a furnace. She drove a 15-year-old Toyota with 240,000 miles. wore the same 3 pairs of work pants in rotation, and lived in a studio apartment she shared with 2 other Nigerian women. But once upon a time, she'd been someone else entirely. Dr. Blessing Nosu, third-year medical student at Lagos University Teaching Hospital, top of her class, specializing in infectious diseases. A future so bright, it hurt to look at directly. Then her father got sick. Kidney failure. He needed dialysis 3 times a week at $400 per session. Her mother sold jewelry. Her brothers sent money, but it wasn't enough. So Blessing did what she thought was right. She stole medication from the hospital pharmacy, just enough to keep her father alive while they figured out transplant options, just enough to buy time. But the pharmacy director noticed. Police were called. Blessing was expelled, arrested, charged with theft. Her father died anyway, 2 weeks before the trial. The charges were eventually dropped. Her lawyer argued extreme emotional distress, but her medical career was over. No hospital would touch her. No program would accept her. Her name was tainted. So she came to America on a work visa, started cleaning pools, and tried very hard not to think about the life she'd lost. But some things you can't stop thinking about. Like the boy who screamed. Blessing had been cleaning the Okafor pool for 6 months. She'd seen Malik exactly 3 times, always from a distance, always being carried away by Claudette after another failed therapy session. The first time, she'd thought, separation anxiety. The second time, specific traumatic association. Maybe he almost drowned once. But the third time, she'd noticed something. The way his skin looked after he'd been near the water. Not wet. He never actually touched it, but irritated, flushed, like an allergic reaction without contact. That didn't make sense. You couldn't be allergic to water. Well, technically you could. Aquagenic urticaria, but that was exceptionally rare, and it would affect all water, not just one pool. Blessing pushed the thought away. Not her business. She was the pool cleaner, not the doctor anymore. But this Thursday morning, something was different. The water looked off. Blessing stopped at the pool's edge, testing equipment in hand. The surface appeared normal, that perfect turquoise blue. But underneath, something was moving. Not debris, not leaves. Something alive. She knelt down, peered closer. Tiny organisms, almost invisible, swirling in coordinated patterns like microscopic schools of fish. Blessing's heart started pounding. She grabbed the skimmer net, dragged it through the water, pulled up a sample. The net came up seemingly empty, but when she held it up to the morning light, she saw them. Hundreds, thousands, translucent organisms about the size of pinheads clustered together, pulsating. Her medical training kicked in instantly. Parasites. Not native to Florida. Not native to anywhere she'd studied in tropical medicine courses, but definitely parasitic, definitely alive, and definitely intentional. Because healthy, well-maintained pools don't spontaneously develop parasitic infestations. Someone had to introduce them. Someone had to cultivate them. Someone had weaponized this pool. Blessing sat back on her heels, mind racing. If these organisms were in the water, if Malik had been exposed to them during his therapy sessions, if they'd been triggering painful reactions every time he got close, sweet Jesus, she whispered. The boy wasn't crazy. The boy wasn't phobic. The boy was being poisoned. Blessing spent the next 3 hours working with an intensity that had nothing to do with pool maintenance and everything to do with the doctor she used to be. She collected water samples from different depths, different locations. She tested pH levels, chlorine concentration, chemical balance. She documented everything with her phone camera. And then she noticed something else. The pool's filtration system. It was custom built, top of the line, installed during the house's construction 3 years ago. But someone had modified it. Blessing could see fresh welds on the main tank, additional chambers that weren't part of the original design. Cultivation chambers. Someone had turned this filtration system into a breeding ground. Blessing's hands shook as she photographed everything. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't negligence. This was deliberate, systematic biological poisoning disguised as pool maintenance. But why? Why would someone do this to a child? She was still photographing when she heard voices. Don't care what the specialists say, Adana. He's getting worse, not better. Chidinma's voice, sharp and frustrated. Blessing froze behind the pool house, equipment bag clutched to her chest. Then we increase the therapy, a man's voice responded. Adetokunbo, the stepfather. Blessing had only seen him twice. Always in expensive suits, always on phone calls. Dr. Chen mentioned a residential facility in Switzerland. A facility? Chidinma's voice cracked. You want to send my son away? Our son needs professional help that we clearly can't provide here. He's not your son. Silence. Blessing held her breath. I'm aware, Adetokunbo said coldly. But I've been his father for 3 years, Chidi. I've paid for every therapy session, every specialist, every treatment. I'm trying to help. By sending him away, by getting him the help he needs. And honestly, having him here is complicated. Complicated how? Another pause. The investors, Adetokunbo said carefully. My business partners. They come here for meetings. They hear screaming. They see your son having episodes. It raises questions about stability, Chidi, about judgment. Blessing's blood ran cold. Are you? Chidinma's voice shook. Are you saying my son's trauma is bad for your business? I'm saying we need to be realistic. He's not improving. Maybe distance, structure, professional supervision. Get out. Chidi. Get out of my sight. Footsteps. A door slamming. Then silence. Blessing waited 5 minutes before moving. Her mind was spinning. Adetokunbo wanted the boy gone. Adetokunbo's business partners were involved. Adetokunbo had built this house, installed this pool, had access to everything. And now the boy was getting worse, becoming more complicated, more of a problem. Convenient. Blessing made a decision. She pulled out her phone and started recording a voice memo as she walked through her findings. Thursday, November 9th, 6:47 a.m. Okafor Residence, 1247 Ocean Drive. Water sample analysis reveals parasitic infestation. Species unknown. Filtration system modified with cultivation chambers. Timeline matches onset of patient symptoms 3 years ago. Preliminary conclusion. Deliberate biological poisoning. Intent unclear. Suspect unknown. She paused. Then added, request, police investigation, child protective services, medical examination. But who would believe a pool cleaner? Who would believe a disgraced medical student? She needed proof, real proof, the kind that couldn't be dismissed, and she knew exactly where to find it. That night, Blessing returned to the estate at 11 p.m. with tools that had nothing to do with pool cleaning, specimen jars, a portable microscope she'd bought at a pawn shop for $200, and a USB drive full of medical journals she'd downloaded. The estate was dark except for security lights. Blessing knew the patrol schedule. Guards checked the pool area every 45 minutes. That gave her a window. She worked fast, collecting samples from the filtration tanks, scraping residue from the cultivation chambers, photographing every modification. Under the microscope, the organisms became clearer. They weren't just parasites. They were genetically modified. Blessing could see it in their structure, features that didn't exist in nature, adaptations that served no evolutionary purpose except one, to cause pain. These organisms were designed to burrow into human skin on contact, release compounds that triggered severe inflammatory responses, then die within hours, leaving no trace except agony. Perfect for gaslighting a victim, perfect for making someone look crazy. Because by the time anyone examined Malik, the organisms would be gone, dissolved, untraceable. All that remained was a boy who screamed at water and couldn't explain why. Blessing felt sick. This wasn't just cruelty. This was sophisticated biological warfare against a child. But why? The answer came at 11:37 p.m. when Blessing heard voices near the house. She killed her flashlight and pressed herself against the pool house wall. 2 men stood on the veranda, smoking cigars. Adetokunbo and someone else. A white man in an expensive suit. Trust fund matures when he turns 18, Adetokunbo was saying. That's 8 years. 8 years is a long time, the other man said. American accent, Southern. Client wants faster results. I'm working on it. The psychological evaluations are building a case for incompetency. If we can get him committed before he turns 18, Chidi becomes trustee of his assets. And you control Chidi. I married her, didn't I? The other man laughed. Dark, empty. What about the pool situation? He asked. Brilliant, actually. Doctor's visits, therapy bills, medications, all documented evidence of mental instability. And it's getting worse. Yesterday, he had a full panic attack just seeing the pool cover. Give it another year, maybe less, and we'll have grounds for permanent institutionalization. Blessing stopped breathing. The organisms? Untraceable. My guy at the biotech lab swears they metabolize completely within 6 hours. No residue, no evidence. And the mother? Clueless. She actually thinks it's trauma from his father's death. She's so desperate for answers, she'll sign anything I put in front of her. Silence. Then the southern man said, You're a cold son of a bitch, Ade. I'm a businessman. The kid's trust fund is worth 47 million. For that kind of money, I'll be whatever I need to be. They laughed. Both of them. Blessing's hands curled into fists. She had her proof. She had everything. But more importantly, she had rage. Blessing didn't go to the police. Not yet. Because she knew how this worked. Rich man, expensive lawyers, misunderstandings, evidence dismissed, witnesses discredited, especially when the witness was a Nigerian immigrant with a criminal record. No, she needed something that couldn't be buried. She needed Chidinma. The next morning, Blessing showed up at 6 a.m. as usual. But instead of starting her work, she knocked on the front door. Claudette answered, surprise flickering across her face. Blessing, is something wrong? I need to speak with Mrs. Okafor. Now, it's about Malik. 5 minutes later, Blessing sat in Chidinma's pristine white living room, her work boots leaving dirt on imported rugs, her hands clutching evidence that would destroy this family. Chidinma looked hungover, exhausted, barely holding herself together. This better be important, she said coldly. I don't appreciate staff showing up unannounced. Blessing pulled out her phone and played the recording. Adetokunbo's voice filled the room. Trust fund matures when he turns 18. That's 8 years. Chidinma went very still. I'm working on it. The psychological evaluations are building a case for incompetency. Chidinma's champagne glass slipped from her fingers. It didn't shatter this time, just rolled across the floor, spilling gold liquid like blood. The kid's trust fund is worth 47 million. For that kind of money, I'll be whatever I need to be. Silence. Then Chidinma looked at Blessing with eyes that had gone from exhausted to lethal. Where is he? She whispered. Office. Downtown. Show me the pool. They went outside together. Blessing showed her everything. The modified filtration system, the cultivation chambers, the water samples teeming with invisible torture. How long? Chidinma asked. Her voice was flat, dead. 3 years, since the pool was installed. Since we married? Yes. Chidinma stared at the water. This beautiful, perfect pool that she'd thought would help her son heal. This weapon disguised as therapy. My husband, she said slowly, has been poisoning my son for 3 years to steal his inheritance. Yes. And I let him. You didn't know. I should have known. Chidinma's voice cracked. I'm his mother. I should have. She stopped, took a breath. When she spoke again, her voice was ice. Call the police. Call everyone. CDC, FBI, Child Protective Services. I don't care. I want everyone here now. Mrs. Okafor. And Blessing, Chidinma looked at her. Thank you for paying attention when everyone else, including me, was too busy to see. The arrest happened that afternoon. FBI, CDC, Miami Police. They converged on Adetokunbo's office like a thunderstorm made of badges and warrants. They found everything. The biotech lab connection, the financial records, the conspiracy with his business partners who specialized in asset management for wealthy widows and orphans. Turned out Malik wasn't the first. There were 6 other cases across 3 states. Children made mentally incompetent through slow poisoning, their assets absorbed into shell companies, their mothers married and manipulated and destroyed. Adetokun Bor was running an empire built on manufactured insanity. The trial lasted 8 months. Media coverage was relentless, but the moment that mattered most happened 2 weeks after the arrest. Malik Okafor walked to the edge of his swimming pool, drained, cleaned, decontaminated by hazmat teams, and sat down. His mother sat next to him. Blessing stood nearby, no longer just the pool cleaner. She'd been hired as Malik's private medical consultant. Chidinma had also paid for her to complete her medical degree through an online program at Johns Hopkins. Second chances, Chidinma had said, should be universal. Malik looked at the empty pool for a long time. Then he said something he'd never been able to say before. It doesn't hurt anymore. Chidinma wrapped her arm around him. Blessing closed her eyes and said a prayer of gratitude. Because sometimes God doesn't send miracles through credentials and degrees. Sometimes he sends them through someone willing to pay attention. Someone willing to trust their gut. Someone willing to be brave when bravery costs everything. 3 years later, Malik learned to swim. Not in that pool. Chidinma had it demolished and turned into a garden, but in the ocean, where water was wild and free and honest, where nothing was hidden, where truth floated on the surface, right where it should be.